Good day, beautiful people. This is Natalie Silva with Life Treasures and Golden Moments, where I share with you true stories of miracles and stories of inspiration. I'd like to finish out our holiday series with another inspirational story written by Karen Kingsbury. The title of today's story is called Christmas Angels. Austin Roselle was 4 years old when his parents noticed his imagination truly taking wing. He loved sports, particularly basketball, and often pretended to be the greatest player of all, Michael Jordan. At bedtime, when the Roselle's children asked for favorite bedtime stories, Austin's request never changed. "Tell me about Michael Jordan's story, Daddy. Please, please, Daddy, tell me about Michael Jordan." And Bert Rochelle would make a story involving Austin and Michael Jordan and some type of crucial basketball game. It got so that as Christmas approached that year, Austin wanted only one thing, a visit from Michael Jordan. Throughout the month of December, whenever the doorbell would ring at the Roselle house, Austin would run toward the front door yelling, "It's probably Michael Jordan." So it was that 3 days before Christmas, when Austin dribbled his child-sized basketball into the family's Portland, Oregon house and announced he was going to Michael's house, his mother thought nothing of it. Austin was always pretending to be visiting with Michael Jordan or taking a trip to his house. That Sunday afternoon, the air was particularly damp, and Austin tugged on his mother's skirt while she washed the dishes. "Bye, Mom. I'm going to see Michael Jordan." Stella Roselle smiled at the child. "Okay, Austin, have fun." Obviously, Austin had no idea where Michael Jordan lived, nor that he did not even live in Oregon. Even if he had known the exact location, Stella knew the boy would never really leave the house, especially by himself. Austin was merely playing a game of make-believe, as he had so many other times, and Stella felt at ease as she continued her conversation and watched the child disappear in the backyard. 15 minutes later, Stella finished the dishes and sauntered outside to round up Austin and his 6-year-old brother, Daniel. The older child was swinging on the family swing set, happily humming a tune from Sunday school earlier that day. The temperature was dropping, and Stella wanted the children to come inside before they caught cold. "Hey, it's getting too cold out here, buddy. Let's go inside and have some dinner." She glanced around the yard. "Where's Austin?" Daniel shrugged, and as he jumped off the swing, "He was dribbling his ball, and he went out that way." Daniel pointed down the street. "He told me he was going to see Michael Jordan." Suddenly, Stella's blood ran cold as she remembered a billboard she'd forgotten about until now. It was 2 miles away on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and it had a larger-than-life photograph of Michael Jordan. "Daniel, you don't think he's going to that billboard picture of Michael Jordan, do you?" Daniel thought for a moment and then shrugged. "Probably. He told me once that he thinks Michael lives there." Stella's heart was immediately in her throat. She ran into the house, found Bert in the computer room, and explained the situation. "You can't find him anywhere?" Bert said. Bert's face immediately drained of all its color. She felt panic welling within her, and she shook her head. "He's gone, Bert. Pray, please pray." Stella called a neighbor to come stay with Daniel, and she and Bert searched the house and the yard again. "What's the last thing you remember him saying or doing?" Bert asked as they climbed into the car and set off slowly down the street, straining to see into every yard. Stella ran her fingers nervously through her hair. "I was doing the dishes, getting ready for dinner, when Austin came in with his ball and told me he was going to see Michael Jordan." "Oh, he says that all the time." "Exactly. I thought he was just playing, and I said, okay." Bert rounded the corner as the two of them exchanged a terrified look. 30 minutes had passed since Austin's disappearance. If the son had attempted the 2-mile walk to Martin Luther King Boulevard by himself, he could have been kidnapped or hit by a car. In addition, the weather had forecast snow, and Austin wasn't dressed warmly enough for their near-freezing temperatures. Most frightening of all, he could be anywhere because the child was too young to have any sense of direction. While Bert wove their car up and down the side streets leading toward the busy thoroughfare, Stella used their cell phone to call the police. "Our little boy wandered off and we can't find him anywhere. We think he might be trying to get to MLK Boulevard." "What's your child look like?" the officer asked. "He's 4 years old, about 3.5 feet tall, white blonde hair, dimples and blue eyes. He's wearing a black and red sweatsuit with tennis shoes and a Chicago Bulls baseball cap. He was dribbling a basketball when he left." Bert continued to drive the streets near their house, and Stella searched up and down each sidewalk as she waited for the police officer to take a full report. Every moment that passed meant that Austin could be getting picked up by a stranger or even run over. She struggled to breathe, suffocated by the feeling of helplessness. Would they be forced to celebrate Christmas without finding Austin? Would they be making funeral plans? On the verge of hysteria, she covered her face with her hands and began to pray. Suddenly, the story of baby Jesus came to mind, the ways in which King Herod tried to have the Christ child killed. At every turn, angels were there to protect Jesus. "Please, God," she prayed out loud, "please watch over Austin and lead me to him. Put your Christmas angels around him, wherever he is." Bert and Stella were deeply faithful Christians and had been all their lives. Together they had taught their boys to pray and trust God in every situation where they felt they needed help. But a few months before, Stella's mother had died of a brain tumor, and since then she had felt none of the joy that usually accompanied her faith. She had even tried letting go of her sorrow by counting her blessings, but she was still left feeling sad and empty. Now, as she sat helplessly in the passenger seat praying they would find Austin, she was keenly aware of how precious life was and how desperately she wanted to find her son and hold him close again. They circled the block surrounding her house and branched out onto Martin Luther King Boulevard, but there was no sign of Austin. "Put your angels around him, God," she whispered again. "Please take care of him and lead him to us, please, God." Suddenly the cloud of sorrow lifted, and she knew how very blessed she was, the mother of 2 beautiful children, married to a loving, faithful man who cherished her and the children. If only she could find Austin, Stella knew she would never take these, God's greatest gift blessings, for granted again. They continued to search intently along dozens of streets, but when 15 minutes passed, they returned home for an update. The police were there talking with their neighbor when they pulled in. "Any sign of him?" The officer looked troubled, as though he knew something terrible had happened. "Nothing." Bert was already headed back for the car. We'll trace that route again. He's got to be somewhere." The officer agreed to look into the opposite direction, and the 2 men made plans to meet back at the house in 20 minutes for an update. Bert hung his head and began crying as he started the car engine. "Not Austin," he shouted through his tears. "Not my Austin." "Pray, Bert," Stella implored as she craned her neck, trying to see up and down sidewalks that they were already checking and had checked twice. "Please pray." The couple set out again, working their way out from the Roselle house in every possible direction. As they drove, they prayed aloud. "Please lead us to him, and please, God, please protect him. Send your Christmas angels like you did 2,000 years ago for baby Jesus." Stella's tears streamed down her face. "Please, God," she added, her voice barely in a whisper. "He's only 4 years old." Terrible thoughts filled their heads as they continued to search. Austin lying in the gutter covered with blood, or miles away in a car of some evil stranger. Stella knew that wherever he was, the child was scared and probably crying for her and Bert. The thought made the search unbearable, yet the pair had no choice but to continue. Nearly an hour after the boy had disappeared, and more than a mile from their house, they turned onto a busy street 1 block from Martin Luther King Boulevard. and saw a foursome on the sidewalk a half a block ahead. Two tall, slim, dark-haired women and a younger blonde woman were walking together a few feet behind a boy with blonde hair wearing a red and black sweatshirt and black sweatpants. The child was carrying a basketball. "Austin!" Bert shouted. He sped up, pulling alongside the three women and little Austin, and quickly parked the car. "Austin! Thank God! Thank you, God! Thank you!" "Austin!" Stella shouted as she jumped out of the car and joined them. The women stood back and watched as Stella and Bert swept the little boy into their arms, relieved and sobbing. Stella fell to her knees next to Austin and pulled him tightly to her, stroking his hair and closing her eyes. "We thought we lost you, baby," she cried into his downy, soft hair. "Thank you, God." "I wasn't lost, Mummy. I was going to Michael Jordan's house." Austin smiled easily, calm and unaffected by his adventures away from home. Standing back, careful not to interrupt the reunion, the woman who had been trailing behind the boy smiled. "He's a character, that one," the older woman said softly. "He was chasing his ball and he fell into a ditch back there a ways. There was a bit of water in it and we helped him out. We've been following him ever since so he wouldn't get hurt." Stella nodded, still clinging tightly to the child. "Thank you so much," she said, wiping at her tears and looking at Austin over to be sure he was all right. The woman continued, "He said he was going to Michael Jordan's house." The other tall woman smiled. "Isn't that a professional basketball player?" "Yes," Stella replied. Stella couldn't take her eyes from Austin, relieved and grateful beyond words that her son was unharmed. "Does he live around here?" The older woman wrinkled her nose, clearly confused. Bert shook his head and uttered a sharp laugh as he tousled Austin's hair. "Austin has quite an imagination lately." He looked at Stella. "I guess we didn't know exactly how much." "Anyway," the woman said, "he seemed to know where he was going." Stella nodded, paying little attention to the women. She swept the boy into her arms and thanked the women once more for their help. Then fresh tears of relief streaming down her cheeks, she and Bert drove off to share the good news with the police and the others. They were at the end of the street when Bert hit the brakes. "Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have offered those women a ride home. It's freezing outside." He did a U-turn and headed back down the block. But the women were gone. Stella checked her watch. Not even 2 minutes had passed since they had left the women. But now, as she and Bert looked up the street, there was no one in sight. "That's strange," she muttered aloud. "No one could walk that fast. I wonder where they went." "Let's keep looking," Bert said. "Maybe if we drive the length of the street, we'll find them resting somewhere." For 10 minutes, Bert and Stella drove back and forth on the street, looking carefully for the woman who had so kindly watched over Austin. "You're right," Stella said. "I feel awful. They were so nice to look after Austin, and then we didn't even offer them a ride home." "Oh, well," Bert finally said, "I guess they got home some other way." There was silence for a moment as Stella thought about her prayer. "Protect him with your Christmas angels." "Bert," Stella said, her voice quieter than before, "you don't think they might have been angels, do you?" "Oh, Stella, come on. They were just friendly women taking a walk and doing a kind deed." "You're right," Stella said. She thought about Austin's falling into the ditch and remembered how a man in a nearby Vancouver had fallen into a similar bog once and had been trapped by the mud. He nearly died of hypothermia, but rescuers found him. She shuddered. A child would never have fared so well. Well, whoever they were an answer to our prayers, that's for sure. Back at the house, Stella and Bert ran inside with Austin in their arms. "We found him walking a mile from here. 3 neighborhood women were walking behind him, watching out for him." "Oh, thank you, dear Lord," the neighbor kissed Austin on the cheek and then left the Rosells to themselves. By then, Daniel had come into the room, awed by the fact that Austin had actually left and grateful that he was home and safe. Bert and Stella put their arms around Austin, pulling him close once more as the family formed a circle. "We were so worried about you, Austin," Stella said softly. "I know, Mummy. I wouldn't go to Michael Jordan's house anymore. Next time he'll come here." "That's good," Bert said. Stella smiled and took the boy's cold, damp hands in hers. "Listen, Austin. Remember those ladies who helped you and stayed with you?" The child nodded. "Yes, Mummy." "They were strangers, but you weren't afraid of them, were you?" "No, they were nice." Bert nodded. "Yes, they looked after you. Did they tell you their names?" "They told me they were from God," Austin said simply. There was a pause as Stella, Bert, and Daniel leaned closer, curious expressions on their faces. "Oh, yeah?" Austin looked up at his mother. "What's an angel, Mummy?" The adults stared at the child for a moment, and then exchanged a knowing look as goosebumps rose up on each of their arms. Quietly and with greater understanding than at any time in his life, Bert directed his family to hold hands. Then he closed his eyes and bowed his head. When he spoke, his voice was filled with awe. "Dear God, we do not know your ways, and we do not pretend to have answers. But somehow today we know you brought about divine intervention in the life of our little Austin. Thank you for hearing our prayers and for bringing him home safely. And God," Bert paused, his voice choked with emotion, "thank you for the simple faith of our children, and thank you for your Christmas angels." Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed our story about little Austin and his Christmas angels. This is Natalie Silver. May your days be filled with joyful moments and cherished memories. And until next time, take care and God bless.